Hi, this is Lawrence from Fine Art Memorials. Recently, I've had a couple customers ask me the question, what's the difference between bronze sculpture, which costs $200, $300, or $400, and then other pieces which are costing $2, $3, $4, or more thousands of dollars? Well, needless to say, there's quite a bit of difference between the two. Typically, I would do a little blog post for this and I'd write out the details, but for this particular question, I think a video is a much better tool. Okay, we have a couple pieces here to help answer this question of what's the difference between an inexpensive piece of sculpture and a nice piece of art bronze. On the left, we have one of our cremation urn sculptures. This is part of our golf series. We call it the Hook. And then on the right, we have another piece that we picked up from a local boutique called Pierre Onet Imports. Perhaps you have one near you. Okay, the bronze sculpture here. We'll start just with a visual inspection. You can see that this is that's obviously a nice metallic hue to it, although that doesn't have to be the case. People will do opaque patinas on bronze so that you really can't see the metal, but in this case you can still see it. You can catch a little bit of that with the golf ball here. We had this patinaed in white, although we try to keep a little bit of color coming back through it. Moving down into here, you can see that there's this little piece between the finger and the turf, and that shows where this piece was actually welded onto this lower piece down here. The bronze sculptures are actually made of multiple pieces, and then they're pieced together after they get through the foundry. Here we have a couple pieces that will form this one right here, and you can see that the hand is cast separately from the arm, which is cast separately from the ball and the tee and the base and all of that. So these are all metal and they're kind of put together, and part of the craftsmanship is going through and being able to tie this together and not be able to see the transitions. There's really some fantastic artisanry which goes into that. To further tell the story, we've got one of our fishing designs right here. This is reading the stream. Now let me flip this thing over. Okay. And you can see on the bottom here that there's a couple artifacts from when this was made. First is this piece right here. This was a sprue where they put this in wax and they melt it up. Look for our other video that goes through the details of how these are made. But this was turned into bronze, and after this was cast, they had to cut this piece off, and you can see the heat that resulted from that. Down here is where the fisher person stands, and that guy or gal was welded into the stream right here. And then we have other points where these are bolted to the onto the wooden base, and so you can bolt those in right here. So here's another one of the sprues. So you can see that these are all handmade, and this bronze was cast. So it's a fantastic process. It's super labor intensive, but really that's part of the value, the fact that these are worked by a person from beginning to end. Okay, now let's take a look at our mother and child. We'll zoom in here a bit. So this also has you can see a bit of a bronze color on there, but actually that's maybe a little more of a copper color. And we'll get to that here in a second. If we look at some of the transitions here, I'll say that these are maybe a bit cruder. They're not as refined, and you can tell that this was likely done in one single piece. If we look at the bottom, just kind of a flat piece down there. Yeah, so this was likely what's called a cold cast or a resin cast, or it could have possibly been 3D printed, but the net of it is that this was done en masse. It was done in a plastic or a resin type material. And then this color on here is painted. This actually isn't metal. So if we turn our folks over right here and get in here with an X-Acto knife, you can see as I do this, there's stuff popping off, and it's clearly not bronze. So it looks like a bronze sculpture, and if we look at these in photographs, this may look like a lovely piece of bronze art, but in fact it's not. Okay, a couple other tests. First, the sound. Clearly this one is metal, but That's obviously metallic. And if we come over to here, that is not. And as you can see, this is bouncing around a bit as I do it. Now granted, this is a bigger base, but this is fairly light. You can kind of toss it around. This is less so. This is a pretty hefty piece of metal. It is a lot more substantial. Okay, one final thing that I'll call out between the two of these. We have the art bronze on the left, we have the mass-produced sculpture on the right. The art bronze is repairable, it is restorable. If you have a wild child or a cat or a home fire, any number of things like this, and if this is damaged, chances are that this piece can be reworked, re-welded, patched, welded, and made to look like new again. The piece on the right here is effectively disposable. If you break it, you can maybe hit it with some super glue, but you can have a super glued piece of art and it kind of loses the effect. You don't typically value a piece like this with whether or not it's repairable or not, but I think that speaks to the permanence of the bronze art piece. Okay, so we've done a brief compare and contrast between these two different sculptures. On one hand, we have the fairly inexpensive mass-produced piece, and then we have the much more expensive art bronze. Which one is better? Is the art bronze worth the premium in price? I don't know. Really, that comes down to you. If you're looking for something that you will have for a long time, if you value the time that the craftsman put into it, if you value the art, then the art bronze may be worth that extra money. If you're looking for a decoration in the home that you don't need to be attached to, that you can use for now, if you're going to move, if you're going to get rid of it later on, then maybe the mass-produced piece is okay. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's important to know which one that you're getting. People will try to pass off the cheap art as the expensive stuff, and that is absolutely bad. That is unethical, but you see it happen. So it's important to be educated. Use the checks that we've gone through in this video to help evaluate your art purchase. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you've got other questions, feel free to drop us a line, give us a call, and we're happy to help. Thanks.